see if there's anybody there.
Okay. We all good? Right, so I'm Lewis. I'm the owner of Black Country Barbell, which is a gym and training facility based in Stourbridge. And I know there's probably a bit of confusion when you're walking in the room. You're like, why are these like bearded men here to talk about menopause? And like, obviously personally, I've not experienced menopause, but I would probably say around about 50% of the clients that we work with are women that are pre, post, or perimenopausal. And 5 years ago when we first opened, I knew kind of the basics of menopause. I kind of knew hot flushes, brain fog. That was basically it. Over the time that we've been working with a lot of clients, we've learned a lot, and it's not just me. We've got a team of coaches who are far better at the coaching side of things than I am. That's what they specialise in. But working and having much more close time with people going through menopause, we've realised how profound some of the changes can be. Not just from like all kinds of training will benefit, but specifically resistance training, and that can kind of directly combat a lot of the negative things that are coming about during menopause. I do also want to say I'm not somebody who does much public speaking. I did this once at Corbett's, so this is only my second time doing it. So just bear with me. I have got. No. Definitely not. So I have got my notes here, so I'm just going to just to kind of refresh me on a few points kind of as I go through. But yeah, so one of the reasons why it's actually so rewarding for us to work with women that are going through menopause is because they do have just so much more potential, because not only are you going to get all the standard benefits that everyone gets from training, but it actually counteracts a lot of those negative impacts that you do get from going through menopause. So there's the kind of the obvious side of menopause where it's kind of the estrogen levels are going down, testosterone levels go down, progesterone levels go down, and that has lots of different varying effects. And obviously the kind of brain fog and hot flushes is the one that everyone talks about. But there's a lot of other effects that don't get mentioned quite as much. So I have actually got like a bit more of a breakdown because I don't want to miss anything. I would be interested to know how many people are kind of experiencing one, two, or all of these kind of symptoms. So I'm just going to go through them. Hot flashes and night sweats, irregular menstrual cycle, mood swings and irritability, sleep disturbance such as insomnia, fatigue and decreased energy levels, change in libido, weight gain, especially around the abdomen, memory lapses and difficulty concentrating, joint and muscle pain, headaches, changes in skin and hair texture, changes in skin elasticity, increased urinary frequency or incontinence, and changes in menstrual flow. So has anyone experienced one or more of those kind of symptoms? Okay, all right. So most of those symptoms, again, they're probably, not everybody has all of them, but they are relatively common. And although those are often the symptoms, they're not necessarily anything that's going to cause any long-term issues realistically. Some of the other issues that start to come about, which kind of accumulates over time, that's really the thing that people need to be aware of. And that's the thing that the resistance training can help combat. So things like osteoporosis, that's probably the big one that often is spoken about a lot. And that is obviously your bones becoming more brittle basically over time, mainly because of the lack of estrogen, which could be combated by HRT if that was a route that you chose to go down. But estrogen is very protective for lots of areas in your body, cognitively, ocular health, and bone density. Those are like some of the main things that estrogen is going to do to keep you healthy and fit and strong in the long run. But when you go through menopause, bone density starts to decrease over time, which then eventually leads to people when they trip or fall. That's when things become a break. And then when you have breaks, I'm sure probably some of you know, depending on what department you're in, a break in your 70s and 80s can be completely life-changing. And I know obviously it's a long way away, but it's important to kind of think of those things and try and get ahead of that. You don't want to get to a point where you're dealing with severe brittle bones, because it's very hard to then incorporate strength training at that point because your bones are so brittle, it's hard to load over time. So resistance training is proven to be the number one thing that you can actually do to help improve your bone density. And this happens at any age. There are studies done with people that are doing this in their 70s and 80s, and it's to a lesser degree, but they see measurable differences in their bone density over time. So the point is to try and do it early on. And I will start to explain what resistance training properly means, but effectively, your body is just really good at adapting to a stimulus. So you pick heavy things up, and your body's like, oh crap, that was really hard. I need to build some muscle, and my bones need to be a little bit stronger so they can bear that load. And it's doing it gradually and progressively over time, and they will like calcify and thicken up. So yeah, that is that's kind of one of the main benefits. Cardiovascular health, that's also something that can end up being a problem when the estrogen levels are low, because again, cardioprotective too. Any kind of training will help with your cardiovascular health, whether it's going out for a walk or a run or a jog or a Zumba class or whatever it is that you wanted to do. Just getting your heart rate elevated, that is going to be a benefit, but you won't get any of the bone density benefits as well. Whereas resistance training can kind of do both of those things at the same time, which again, it's all about really time efficiency, because we don't all have unlimited hours in the day to do lots and lots of training. And also, like, why would you want to? It's about being as efficient as you possibly can. Like I train for I train 3 days a week, and the sessions probably last me between an hour and 90 minutes. That's whereabouts I'm at right now, because I'm quite busy with lots of other things. Can't be arsed. I work in the gym all the time, so I want to, get done, get home, enjoy my life, do other things as well. Oh yeah, you okay?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just
No, that's fine. Yeah, just have a seat. So yeah, it's about trying to actually be quite efficient with your time. It's not just, have you heard of the 80-20 rule? Has anyone heard of that? Yeah, like 80% of the results from 20% of the effort. And it's to get that last 20% requires so much more time and effort. So for most people, just to think about the 80-20 rule, 20% of the effort will get you 80% of the benefits of resistance training. So, so weight-related issues as well. So going through menopause, your metabolism tends to slow down. There are multiple reasons why that happens. It can happen partially through your hormonal profile changing, but also the decrease in muscle mass, which again is kind of a downstream effect of the hormonal changes. But as you lose muscle mass, your metabolism slows, which leads to more weight gain. It's kind of they feed into each other. It's a bit of a slippery slope. And again, all forms of exercise will help with this, because if you think about weight loss from a let's just burn calories point of view, anything works. Like I said, going for a walk, going for a run, doesn't matter. Just elevating your heart rate, burning calories, brilliant. That only burns calories acutely, like at the time where you're exercising. There is this kind of like metabolic effect where your metabolism's a little bit faster for a few hours afterwards. But the thing that really makes the most difference to someone's metabolism is the amount of muscle mass that they hold. Because having muscle on your body, muscle's like a very greedy tissue. Like, it requires energy to stay on your body. So you could have two people, if they were the same total weight, but one of them had, much more muscle and less body fat, the other had much more body fat and less muscle. They're the same weight, but the one would be able to get away with eating a lot more food without gaining body fat, because the muscle mass is using those calories up. And that happens 24/7, all day, every day. When you're asleep, your body's just burning more calories, which is, for me, that's one of the main reasons why I love training, because it just gives me so much more of a buffer to eat nice food, to have a drink occasionally, and to have balance. Because I think that's also a misconception. Just because I own a gym doesn't mean that I do everything perfectly, because you don't need to do everything perfectly. Like, it's about having a life but still trying to get as many benefits out of resistance training as you can. Like I said, that kind of 80-20 rule. So resistance training will also add that extra muscle mass. You're also still going to be burning calories. It's not like, just because the goal of the workout isn't to burn calories doesn't mean that you're still not doing the same thing. It's more, if you had an hour window to train in, if you were doing an hour of pure cardio, yes, you will burn more total calories than if you did an hour of resistance training, but not by a huge amount. And again, that's just the acute effect. So the compounding effect of increasing your muscle mass over weeks, months, years, that will really move the needle in the long run. And then cognitive function. So again, like I mentioned, estrogen being lower, progesterone as well, that can definitely lead to some brain fog, some memory lapses, and irritability, and also issues with mood as well. Depression, rates of depression are a lot higher with women that are going through menopause, because your brain is literally just not functioning as it's intended to, just because everything's so turbulent at that point. And this is where training doesn't directly combat the issue in terms of it's not increasing your estrogen, it's not increasing the progesterone or things like that. But I'm sure everyone's been out for a walk or a run or done some kind of exercise at some point in the past and felt that kind of the runner's high. That it's the endorphins that are coming in. So that is a temporary boost that will help you feel a little bit more focused, give you a little bit more clarity, a little bit more thought. And I have ADHD, and I actually find my work after training is so much clearer because I've got that rush of endorphins, and I've also managed to kind of get out some of the extra energy and stuff like that. But a lot of people do find that they're able to focus a lot more, and it will give you more mental clarity. So that's kind of a few of the main kind of risks of the osteoporosis, the cardiovascular, the weight gain, which can lead to an array of different things, and then the cognitive function. So there's obviously the mood enhancing benefits of exercise, which I'm sure is it's well talked about now. I think a lot of people know the benefits of exercising regularly. Going to really help with your mental state. And we have quite a few clients that are occupational therapists, and one of the first things that they often ask is, how active are you? Just getting people out moving, that's one way of just helping combat it. And like I said, we have quite a few clients that are therapists, and for them, training and exercise is their first line of defense for looking after their own mental health. So if that doesn't say how important it is, I think there's not much else. So some of the benefits of resistance training, I'm going to kind of go through them, and I'll break them down a little bit more in terms of what and why. So increased muscle mass and endurance. So like I said, that will help so many different reasons. Obviously, being stronger, having better endurance can help in anything, in work, with playing with the kids or grandkids, getting the shopping in, doing some work in the back garden. Being fitter and stronger is very, very useful. Improved bone density. So obviously we already spoke about trips and falls. If a trip or fall does happen, it will just be, it's not great, but it'll be bruises opposed to breaks. Enhanced metabolism and calorie burning, which will help you manage your weight over time, which again minimises the risk of everything else. The more toned appearance. I spoke about this when I did the last one. Toned and toning is like a buzzword in the fitness industry, and it's not really a thing. Most people, when they say I want to be more toned, they basically just want people to see their muscles a little bit more, and you can't necessarily train to be toned as such. The toning happens via two things: having a slightly larger muscle that is more defined, it's more prominent, more shapely, which just comes from strength training. So you're actually trying to build that muscle larger. And then the other one is reducing your body fat. So there's less fat surrounding the muscle, so it's more visible. So that is the kind of toning effect. And obviously training, as you can obviously see, increased muscle mass, lower body fat. So you'll look more toned, if that's what you want to call it. Better joint stability. So this is another one. I actually was talking to, I had a client, she just signed up with us yesterday, and she's just retired, and she does agility with her dogs. And she said she's having all kinds of knee pain, and all, because if you've ever seen the agility with the dogs, they're like running and then they have to turn to get to the next obstacle. And actually, when you're turning, that's when most of the tension is through the joints, going through like sharp turns and bends. That's why a lot of football players can have issues. And anyway, when you're training, it's just going to help develop the muscles around the joint, which are going to support them a little bit better. But also, it's going to help with your proprioception, which is your ability to be aware of the positions that your body's in. You're going to be a lot more mindful of positioning, not letting yourself get in compromised positions, and then also have the strength and stability to stay there. Also, it's quite common for women to have hypermobility. Does anyone in here have hypermobility? Okay, so it's really common. We have so many clients that do, and it can vary. Sometimes it's just very mild, and it might just be specific to certain joints. But we have in the past dealt with some clients with very severe hypermobility, where they literally couldn't carry their shopping without their fingers dislocating. And resistance training, again, getting stronger, helps hold the joints in the positions that they're meant to. Helps kind of just support the overall area, and also and probably most importantly, you become very aware of what your safe ranges of motion are, and then not to go outside of those. Better cardiovascular health. It's obviously going to increase, increase your metabolism, but also just general fitness. You're not going to get out of breath going up and down the stairs, things like that. Increased flexibility and range of motion. So strength training and resistance training is a very useful tool to actually help improve mobility too, if it's done in the correct way. So again, being a bit more mobile can be pretty helpful. Increased insulin sensitivity. This comes from having more muscle mass, which again, that's the kind of common sense. There's a lot of benefits to that. Mood, sleep, just general functional fitness for every single day. A huge one is just increased confidence. A lot of the time, if you're feeling shit internally, sorry, I'm no good at not swearing. If you're feeling like that, it's going to be really hard to bring like 100% who you are to the table. If you're not feeling happy in your own skin, if you're feeling tired, if you've got brain fog, all this, and it's not all of you, and you're holding a lot of that back. And probably the confidence effects that we see on our clients is one of the most rewarding parts of what we do, because people can come in and be very subdued, very quiet, and they say, like, I haven't felt like myself for quite some time now. Regardless of whether it's menopause or not, whatever their situation might be, they're coming to see us because they're not happy with how they are. And then seeing them just a few months down the line, because this change can happen very quickly, because you get the short-term benefit of I've trained, endorphins, feel good. But there's a bigger, more long-term effect, which is you actually taking control. Because a lot of the time people just feel like they're stuck in their body. They've got no control of. They just it is what it is. This is just how I am. I'm stuck. And you realise, oh crap! If I actually do these things, I'm the one who's in control. I dictate what my weight looks like. I dictate how I function. It does require effort. It does require time, but that's really empowering. It gives you the control back, which a lot of the time, especially through menopause, when there are things that are outside of your control, it just gives you a handle on something, which is very nice to have. And yeah, so that's it. So I'll kind of break down what resistance training actually is, because I think it's probably sounds more intimidating than it is. I don't know, have any of you done any kind of resistance training now? Yeah, okay. So the basics of what resistance training is, it's just exercise against resistance. So you're picking something up, or pressing something, pulling something. You're just picking up something that's somewhat heavy. And I think you probably maybe got the image of somebody like with a barbell on the back with a few hundred kilos or something like that. And that is a type of resistance training. And that could be where you end up, several years down the line. You might not believe it, but we see it quite often. But resistance training can start at a very, very low kind of entry level. And you don't necessarily need a gym membership to start with. You don't necessarily need a gym membership ever. It's really, I've got a nice gym and I've spent lots and lots of money on getting as much equipment as possible. And I'd love to tell you that you have to do that. It's the only way of getting fit, but it's not true. You can do it at home. You have to be a little bit more creative. You have to also understand that there are going to be some limitations by what equipment that you can probably have around your house. But you can still get a good chunk of progress. And I think for a lot of people, that's actually probably a better place to start, is some home workouts. Because again, especially if your confidence isn't quite there at the start, gyms are scary. Even for me, again, owning a gym, sometimes if I'm traveling, I'll be off training at a different gym. And you walk in, it's huge, you don't know where anything is, you're trying to figure stuff out, and you don't want to walk around like a lemming trying to work out what's going on. And I get that. I own a gym and I still feel that, so I can imagine it's even worse if you're completely new to that environment. And even if you're looking at that thing, you probably still don't know what it means. So that's why we kind of have an approach of keeping it very basic, very simple, and we kind of titrate it up in terms of the intensity and the variety that you're actually going to focus on. So like I said, it is just picking up things that are heavy. But resistance bands, again, they do the same kind of thing. It adds some element of resistance. These are super cheap. You can pick them up from Aldi for like 5 or 10 quid for a little pack of like a few different resistance bands. And you can go through lots of different movements. So during all the lockdowns, we still worked with all of our clients and we did a lot of stuff over Zoom. So we worked remotely. And I don't know if anyone remembers seeing the price of fitness equipment during lockdown. like quadrupled at the time, and it was ridiculously expensive. So it was basic and very, very hard to even get hold of if you could. So it was really hard for any of the clients to kind of get what they needed. And we gave out all the equipment in the gym, but you know, we have quite a lot of clients, so it was still spread pretty thin. So some people ended up with maybe a kettlebell or resistance bands or a few little bits, not, you know, not a huge range of stuff. And that was a real eye-opener for us, because we actually realised how much progress people made with very basic equipment. And our team, the coaches had to be a lot more creative with how they trained. We had to utilise a lot of other things that we always utilise, but definitely not to the extent that we did during lockdown. But yeah, people did brilliantly, and it kind of showed me how far you can actually get with something like just some resistance bands, but also just like a little tote bag. So this is just an empty bag. Bought 2 of them off Amazon during lockdown. There are a few, I think they're about $5 each. So what you would do, simply just open it up, and you can put a can of beans in there, or 2 or 3 or 4, or not just beans, you can put whatever you've got, a bag of sugar. And this is a way of incrementally loading something that is ergonomic enough to hold in your hands, to be able to press over your head. And again, it does a very similar job to a kettlebell or a dumbbell. So that, right now at the start, yes, you're going to be limited, because a can of beans is 500 grams, and say you can get, 8 in there. So you've got 4 kilos. It's not a huge amount of weight, but 4 kilos is definitely enough to get some people started for certain movements. So that's what resistance training can look like at the very beginning. That's all it needs to be for the especially first few weeks, and you might even squeeze out a few months, and then you might want to start investing in a few other bits for your home, or even start to look at getting into a gym if you want full access to like everything that you can get hold of. So that's really what resistance training is, just picking stuff up. And then there are a few other factors that we need to talk about, like kind of what exercises to actually do. So there are a bunch of movement patterns. You'll see there are literally thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of exercises you can do when you start to factor in every variation of them that you could do. But they all kind of fall into certain categories. You've got a squat movement, a hinge movement, a press, a pull, a lunge, a twist, and a gait. Those are your main movement patterns that you do. And resistance training is just doing them with some kind of a load. So, and you just kind of do that over time. So all we try to do with our clients, I wish I'd have actually printed it off now. We created this, I don't know what the charts are called. I was no good at the charts and stuff when I was at school. It's like, there's like 4 circles, and then there's like an overlapping area in the middle. Venn diagram, there we go, that's it. Yeah. It's like a Venn diagram. And it's kind of how we pick our exercises. And it's got to be, right, this is going to test me now. So it's like, if you're able to load it safely, if it doesn't hurt you, if you have access to everything that you need, and you can progress over time with it, that's the right exercise for you. So that's it. And you basically do that Venn diagram for each one of those movement patterns. So like a squat, for example, like I said, you imagine somebody, the big heavy barbell on their back, squatting all the way down. And a lot of the time, people are like, oh God, I don't think I've got the range of motion to do that. I don't think I could balance and do that. And the vast majority of people can't, because we all sit on chairs. We don't need to bend our knees past 90 degrees. But you look at every single toddler, and they will sit on the floor in a very deep squat position, and they'll be completely comfortable just relaxing down here. And you look at countries where they still eat on the floor, or they go to the toilet in a hole, they all still have that range of motion because they use it. And it really is kind of, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's a perfect example. You'll see in like Asian countries, people in their 70s, 80s, 90s, sit down into a deep squat, no problems, no pains, no nothing, because they never stopped. But you can't just jump straight back into it and be like, right, I'll do that. That's day one, because it's clearly not. But having a chair and performing a squat onto a chair, because that's something that we all do already, right? You all sat down once, so I know that you've all done at least one squat. And it's just how you think about performing that. If you control the descent all the way down, so I'm just going to sit my hips back and slowly control it all the way and sit nicely on there, and then slowly bring myself back up. So at no point did I go down and then plonk into the chair. That's That was a squat. That's like we call it like a box squat. So it's not necessarily always done to a box, but it's done to some kind of a platform. And it's a brilliant introduction to squatting for a lot of people, because a lot of people worry about actually falling over in that bottom position. And especially if you lack the ankle mobility or the hip mobility to get into those positions, at least you've got something to sit down on. It's more psychologically a safety blanket for you. But also, if your mobility is lacking, this is something. There's a type of training called progressive range of motion training. So you will start off at a fixed range of motion, and then instead of the progression being add more weight, add more sets, add more reps, add more volume, add more whatever, you will actually increase via improving the range of motion. So say we had this chair and a couple of books stacked on top of the seat there. So I would sit onto the books. I would do that for a week or two until that felt very comfortable and I could control the descent all the way down and all the way back up. Remove one of the books. So it's added an extra inch or half an inch of range of motion. Do that for a week or two until that starts to feel normal, and then you progress all the way down. There is a point where things will stall out. Everyone has their own limiting factors with their mobility, like certain people's hip structure just will not allow super deep squats. That's just not how everyone is built. But most people should be able to get to a 90-degree angle. Also, people with knee pain, that's a big scary factor for people when they want to start squatting, and box squats are brilliant for that. Because, I was saying about the lady with agility, and when she was changing directions, that's when she was feeling all the pain. So most of the tension through a joint is that moment where the direction changes. So when you're squatting down and then you have to reverse to come back out of it, that moment where it reverses, that's where most of the tension is on the joint, and that's the painful part. When you do it into a box, your knees are unloaded at this moment, and then you're coming back out. So you just miss out that tiny little gap where there is most risk. So people with really bad knees that have had like full knee operations, knee replacements, they tend to be okay doing this. Can't say it for everybody because you've got to judge everything on a kind of case-by-case basis. But like, I genuinely don't actually know any clients that we've worked with that have ever not been able to do this. It might take a bit of time to work them up to there. But yeah, so this is what it can start off with. This is like the progression of it. So another way you can make this more challenging would be to stand on a band, chuck it over the back of your neck, and then now you've got a little bit of resistance pulling you down. It does the same job as putting a bar on your back. It's not quite as heavy, obviously, but again, that's a starting point. Holding the bag, can of beans, 2 cans of beans, 3 cans of beans, again, progressively overloading that over time. So yeah, that's a squat. I'm going to run through some of the movement patterns and just actually demonstrate what they are, just so you've got some kind of an idea of how you would structure something together. So a hinge, this is one that often people get confused with. So a hinge, have you heard of deadlifting? Yeah, okay. So deadlift is where you'll bend over and pick something up from the floor. So you're still going to be doing a lot of the same things that you do when you squat. So you're going to be bending at the hips, bending at the knees, but there is a lot more hip bending and a lot less knee bending. So you're going to tip forward like this. And people get confused because when they're taught manual handling, they're like, oh, you need to lift with your legs, not your back, which I would probably argue that sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. And if you look at pretty much everybody who competes in any kind of strength sport, they will deadlift more than they can squat. So why would you not be lifting with your back? It's more a case of not lifting with a rounded back. When I'm deadlifting, although you see me hinging forward, my glutes and my hamstrings are still working. They're actually some of the main movers that are getting me to stand upright. So a hinge is quite tricky for a lot of people to learn. The cue that we use for most of our clients is, imagine you're just getting out of the car, you got your hands full of shopping, and then you're trying to shut the car door with your bum. Think about that's literally what you're doing. That's the start of a hinge, just pushing your hips back. And just from doing that, you'll feel a slight bit of tension come into your hamstrings. You just keep exaggerating that, and then you'll feel more and more load into your hamstrings and glutes. That's a hinge. A deadlift would be a barbell on the floor. You can simulate that with a bag. You literally start. You're aiming to try and keep your spine as neutral as possible. And it's about finding that range of motion that fits you. So I've got relatively tight hamstrings. So for me, that's quite a good stretch on my hamstrings and glutes. I can go lower, but then I have to start rounding at my lower back or my mid back to kind of make up for that lack of mobility elsewhere. So this is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep neutral and then just push the hips through. That's a hinge movement. A press, pretty straightforward. You just press something away from you. There's a horizontal and a vertical press. Again, show that with a resistance band. Vertical press, straight up overhead. You can see how, I'm sure you've probably seen somebody do like a press like this with a dumbbell. And then a horizontal press would be very similar to like a press up, but this is again, if press ups are a little bit challenging, because they tend to be quite challenging for somebody first getting started. It's the exact same movement, but just less of a load. And you probably won't see me that well if you're sat at the back, but lying on the floor and then pressing using a bag like this, it's exactly the same kind of thing. Really easy, quite straightforward. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You don't have to know every single machine in the gym. And there's a reason why we start with free weights, because yes, I own Black Country Barbell, so we are a free weight based gym. We do have plenty of machines in there as well, but especially for beginners, focusing a little bit more on free weights, you get more benefits. So you can jump onto a machine and that will help you get stronger. It will help you increase your muscle mass. It will help burn some calories. But what free weights will do that machine weights won't is they will help you with the balance and the coordination and the stability. So you're getting more bang for your buck with the time that's spent there. And especially as a beginner, it's really handy to get those extra things in, because you want to learn them when you're still relatively weak. You don't want to get to a point where you've used machines for years and years and years, and you're actually super strong, but very unstable. And then you try to, you've used leg press your entire life, you've leg pressed 400 kilos, and you go to squat and your legs are extremely powerful, but the second you get out of a range of motion that you're comfortable with, that's when people tear muscles, because they're strong and powerful and they can contract the muscle very hard, but they're not stable. So we always try to incorporate free weights from the start. The problem is there is a much higher learning curve with free weights. On a machine, you can just jump on. You can't really get it wrong that much because you're locked into a fixed range of motion. So the reasons why it's super user-friendly is also some of the reasons why you're not getting all the benefits out of training that you could. Realistically, you're better off using a machine. If the machine is your only option, then you're better off doing that than nothing at all. But we always tend to spend the first 6 to 12 months with people, making sure that they are very competent, very mobile, have the balance and the coordination to get good with just free weights, whatever that may be, whether it's dumbbells or kettlebells or barbells or resistance bands. Right, what did I do? So I did a push, that was the last one. So a pull, again, horizontal and a vertical pull. You can do this with a bag. So imagine the same deadlifting position where I'm hinging over, and then you just be able to row that up to your chest. Same kind of movement. And then if you were doing a vertical pull, now I warned everyone about this last time. So there was quite a lot of fail videos of people doing this, and they'd be like hooking a band over the top of their door frame, and then they'd be pulling down like that, and then it would slip off the top of the door frame and slap them around the head or something like that. So do it at your own risk. But a coat hook, assuming it is well fixed to the wall, which I wouldn't trust that, if I'm honest. So I was going to demo it, but I'm not. Although it is on video, so at least it'd be funny. But so the best way of doing it, I have done it myself, but during lockdown, but I was definitely paranoid the entire time while I was doing it. And I just had the door open. I straddled the door, so my legs were either side of it. This was hooked over the top, and then I was able to pull straight down. But just be very mindful, and also put a towel or something over the top of the door, so the resistance band isn't rubbing against the sharp edge of the door. Because I also saw a video where it rubbed away, snapped, and slapped them around the head because they'd snapped the band. So another thing to think about. Also, a bent over row that you could do, just bend over, stand over the band so it anchors it down, and then you're able to pull like that. I'm going off on a bit of one here before I've finished this, but resistance band, there is definitely a difference between resistance bands and what we would call straight weight. So this is kind of when you load up a barbell or a bag or a dumbbell or whatever it is, it's 20 kilos on the floor, it's 20 kilos in the air, it's always the same. Resistance bands are not, it's exponential load. It starts off with barely any tension and progressively gets harder and harder and harder and harder as you progress through that range of motion. Physiotherapists use bands quite a lot because they can often work quite nicely with how your muscles work. Muscles tend to be the weakest when they're the most elongated and strongest when they're the most contracted. So a band can accommodate that same level of resistance. So the point is really, a resistance band will feel very different to training with straight weight. And also, there is a point where resistance bands actually will start to increase your risk of injury. You do not want to only exclusively use resistance bands forever, because again, that accommodating resistance isn't how the real world works. The same kind of thing where you can get too strong from machine weights to increase your risk of injury. The same thing can happen with excessive use of resistance bands. So they're great to get you started, and it's not like this isn't going to happen over a few months. This is like if you kind of progress very hard for a good couple of years, then you're probably at quite high risk of maybe hurting something if you transferred over. Right, what was I doing? So I did a squat, a hinge, a press, and a pull. So a lunge, everyone knows what a lunge is. This isn't something that we often incorporate immediately with clients because it's too challenging on balance, coordination, and strength. But lunges can start off very simple, even with like an isometric hold. So you can just grab hold of a table, get yourself into a split squat position, go down, and just hover that knee over the floor. You can kind of support yourself with a chair or a table and just isometrically hold that position. And that is enough to get started. But we don't always incorporate that straight away. It depends on the individual and how competent they are and how quickly they pick things up. A twist, again, you can anchor a band to a door and literally do it's called like a Russian twist. So it's just trunk rotation. And a gait is just walking. So we all walk, but there is ways of walking with load. So there's a thing called a yoke, which you carry on your back, or farmers walk handles, something that's really helpful for a lot of people. But again, we prioritize that a little bit lower in the list of things that we do. And then you've almost got a separate category, which would be your accessory movements or your isolation movements, things like bicep curls, tricep extensions, calf raises. And now this is really where it's like down to efficiency. So it depends on how much time you've got. Can you be fit, strong, healthy without any isolation work? Yeah, of course you can. Pressing is going to be working your pecs, it's going to be working your shoulders, but it's also going to work your triceps. So you don't exclusively have to do more tricep work. Any pulling movement, also going to be working your biceps. So do you have to do it? No, not necessarily. But sometimes if you've got more time, if you feel like there are certain areas that are weak, you might want to incorporate some of these like isolation movements. Just to bring up weak areas. But for the most part, people that have been training realistically for 6 months probably won't know what their weak areas are. You're still too new with training to kind of have these points like stand out to you, because at the start everything's going to be kind of weak. So yeah, that's it. Those are the main movement patterns, and then we're going to talk about briefly how to actually structure a training plan. There's a ton of different ways of doing it. And there is definitely, and I'm not saying that this is the only way, there are so many ways of doing it. Whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced would maybe dictate what that would often look like. But we definitely have our preferences on how we will train beginners and how we would structure things for beginners. So we, with new lifters, massively prefer full body training to body part splits, where you do like a chest day, a back day, a leg day, whatever else. Full body training just tends to be so much better for multiple reasons, because as a newer person to lifting, you benefit more from better with more frequency opposed to more volume. So we would rather you came in and did those like squat and hinge movements 3 times a week with just a couple of sets opposed to 1 time a week with like 10 sets. Do you know what I mean? Because it's spacing that workload over time. And if you think about it, if you're doing 10 sets, imagine the breakdown of quality of those reps as you're fatiguing over time. They're going to start to get a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse. So you're training with that kind of compromised positions, that compromised strength, whereas you could still do the same total workload but space it evenly over the week, and it'll be better quality work. And then also, kind of common sense, but all of these movements are a skill, same as riding a bike. If you practice riding a bike once a week or 3 times a week, which one are you going to get better at? It's going to be 3 times a week. Same with the movements. You squat 3 times a week opposed to once a week, you will pick that skill up faster. So that is why we tend to lean towards full body training for newer lifters. I'm still doing a full body plan at the moment because of the frequency in which I'm training 3 days a week. So realistically, it probably isn't optimal to do another training split like that. So when you're a beginner as well, you don't need 3 different workouts for 3 different sessions. You can literally do the same workout every single session. But it's important to progress over time. So the type of progression that all beginners need, it's called linear progression. You move in a straight line, you linearly increase something, because when you're training, your body adapts to, you apply a stimulus to your body, it adapts to it, and then it's like, right, sweet, we've done this now. So unless you keep moving the goalposts, you'll start to stagnate a little bit. So what we often do, and the most common form of progression, is adding weight. You come in, you do something, you come back again, do it a little bit heavier, a little bit heavier, a little bit heavier. And at some points that stalls out, because obviously if we all just kept adding weight every single time, we'd all be like world's strongest man or woman. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It's a little bit more tricky. But a common kind of progression scheme that we would do, you can kind of do weekly progression. So that entire week you can work with the same weight, and then the next week rolls around and you increase everything 1 can of beans, or whatever, whatever it is that you're using, 1 kilo if you're at a gym. And that's a really steady way of progressing over time. When you get to a point where you stall out with something, you regress back to 80% of whatever it is you failed with. So if you get to 10 cans of beans, drop down to 8 cans of beans and start from that point again. And by the time you get back up to 10 cans of beans, you'll be a little bit stronger. So you might make it to 11 cans of beans before you fail. And then you rotate back down. That is basic linear progression. There are other ways of progressing, such as you can increase the total volume that you perform in a workout. So I gave an example last time of, you've got 3 sessions a week, you do the same exercises, but the first session of the week, you just do 1 set of 10. Then the second workout of the week, you do 2 sets of 10. Third one, you do 3 sets of 10. And then you're on to the next week, and you drop back down to 1 set, but you've increased the weight a little bit. So the volume has dropped, but the intensity has increased. And then you ramp up again. So it's almost like a stairway like that. And if you track the progress over time, it will still be moving up. But again, that is just linear progression. And that is a way that somebody can just progress over time. Is everyone kind of following? Yeah? There is so many other ways of doing it. And the more advanced you get into training, programming gets more and more complex. And there's a whole science about progression with strength training. And it's dull, to be honest. I like it because maybe I'm dull, but I find it really interesting. But almost all of our clients never really want to learn much past this kind of the basic progression schemes. And really that can get people going for a good few years, to be honest. It depends on you as an individual. Some people will stall out after maybe 6 months. Some people can milk that for 2-3 years. We don't necessarily know why. Some people just are able to just keep going with it a little bit longer than others. I got a couple of years out of it, whereas I know plenty of people that will flatline after 6 months or so. So that is a kind of basic kind of structure to training. I've tried to keep this, I know I still rambled a little bit, I've tried to keep it a bit more concise than last time. Just wanted to know, has anyone got any questions about anything that I've spoke about so far, anything to do with training? Yes?
I've got 2 different issues. I've got cerebral palsy and I've got rheumatoid.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do kickboxing. I used to do quite a lot of kickboxing.
Yeah.
Obviously, I can't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've tended to do is I do a lot of walking, because I find there's no load on me.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah.
I have lost a stone, which I've been trying to do.
Brilliant.
Because I want to eat at Christmas.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, why not? Yeah, getting a head start.
And also for my own health as well. I just want to know, obviously, my husband bought me some kettlebells.
Yes.
For Christmas. The romance is still there.
I can tell.
My husband bought me some kettlebells for Christmas. I have but I'm concerned that I put a lot of load on this side, not so much on this side. So I will do the kettlebells, and I'll do the squats, and I'll do I'll do it in the lounge.
Yeah.
With a cat. But it's just I tend not to do a lot here, but I'd still want the strength through this arm.
Yeah.
I did have a personal trainer for a while, but I'm still very self-conscious about being in a gym area.
Yes. Yeah. When you had a personal trainer, were you at a gym there, or did they come to your house or something?
I was in the gym.
Okay. All right.
I was very self-conscious because obviously some of my movements aren't like everybody else's. So. Yeah.
Again, it's something. Everyone's an individual. Everyone comes with their own set of problems. It's extremely rare that we will get a client come through the door who knows exactly what they're doing, trains well, moves well, doesn't have any other external factors that are complicating, because they're seeing us for a reason, realistically. And everyone has a lot of room for improvement. We work with clients with cerebral palsy, with MS, with all kinds of things that are quite detrimental to their health, and there's always ways around it. The trouble is, when you have other health factors in play, you've got less room for error when you do things on your own. Do you know what I mean? You have to be a lot more mindful of where you spend the time, because we all only have so much ability to recover from training. And when we add in other things, whether it be another health condition or stress at work or lack of sleep or lack of proper nutrition, all these other things, they're all little things that are taking little chunks out of your ability to recover. So whatever excess you have is really what you're trying to use up with some form of training. And then, yeah, if you've got these other factors, that chunk is just a little bit smaller. So you don't really want to waste any time or be inefficient with the things that you're doing. So yeah, what was the actual concern really about the shoulder then? Is all that?
It's just because my rheumatoid, I tend to get a lot of trapped nerves in the shoulder.
Yeah.
Because my shoulder drops, and it's just I do move this shoulder because obviously what I don't want to do, if I don't use it, I'll lose it.
Yeah.
Because it'll just stiffen up, and then so I was doing, for example, just put it for example. Last night I did a 30-minute workout because that's all I could do.
Yeah, that's great.
Physically, that's all I could do. Got myself in the zone in pyjamas. But I exercise in my pyjamas because I find it more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I've got my kettlebells and got the music on very loud.
Yeah.
Happy in my own world. But I found that I was putting a lot of load, even though I seem to know what I'm doing, but I was putting a lot more load on this one shoulder.
Yeah.
And then when I actually finished and did my stretches, I just found that this shoulder was really tight.
Okay. What exercises were you actually doing that you felt like you were putting the load through?
Doing the kettlebell with like squat and like.
Is it a swing? Yeah.
Swing.
Okay. All right.
Because what I have to do is put my hand over that hand so it works it, because otherwise I can't put the full weight through this hand.
Yeah.
So I was trying to put my
dominant hand over
the top.
Yeah.
And then I can do a full range of swings that actually get swings through the shoulder.
Yeah.
Then I found the shoulder was.
Yeah, no, well, it is going to, and again, without actually spending time working with you directly, it'd be impossible for me to say exactly what's going on. But generally speaking, so we've had clients with severe nerve damage, things like that. There's going to be certain factors that you will not 100% cure. Like you're not going to like completely undo that issue. It's about doing what you can with what you've got. So it can be some like more direct work with a lesser load. Even one client that we had before, she had extremely bad nerve damage in her shoulders she fell off a horse when she was younger. Never saw a physio. Didn't know that she actually had that nerve damage until years later. And that side had atrophied so much that she was able to get to about here, and she couldn't put her arm any further over her head. And she was only I think she was in her late 30s. So it got to the point where she literally couldn't raise her arm straight over her head. The other side, completely fine, full mobility, everything. So we wouldn't have loaded the one side the same as we load the other side. It's almost, I know that it's intuitive to treat your body like evenly, and in the normal situation you probably would treat the body evenly. But if you think about a 1 kilo dumbbell for your weaker arm is going to be the same level of stress and fatigue as maybe a 5 kilo would be for your strong arm. So I think it's almost trying to treat them independently sometimes. Obviously a kettlebell swing is going to work them together, which you can do, but it might be the case that you might just need to incorporate a little bit on top of that. And again, it's hard to say without seeing any more time with you, but like there may just be some stretches and mobility work that might need to be incorporated as well, especially if you're feeling a lot of tightness more on the one side than the other. Okay. All right. Has anyone else got any other questions? Any like specifics about what I've gone over?
I think going into a gym, the weights part of a gym is really intimidating because it's mostly men.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely a factor.
And I think when you're not feeling very confident, you think, oh God, I can't go.
Yeah, no,
it's difficult.
It is, yeah, and obviously I can't speak from personal experience on it, but I've experienced it going into different training facilities, and like what are we, probably about 60-40 to male. So we're
more female members train more regularly than do males.
Yeah, so although our numbers are slightly more men, but yeah, it normally does feel like, depends on what time of day you come, but like does normally feel like there's actually more women at our place. not for any particular reason. It just tends to be how it is. And I think because we've got quite a lot of clients that are kind of going through this, I suppose it's kind of word of mouth. They'll tell their friends that are also experiencing it, and then they'll end up joining. I was talking to somebody the other day actually, and she's been training for years, but she'd only ever been in like the women's only bit of Pure Gym, and the heaviest dumbbell was like 12 kilos, and she'd been training for years, but like she got to a point where her ceiling was what she had access to, and it was trying to get her confident enough to head out into the rest of the gym. And once she'd done it, those first few sessions were really stressful because it's just navigating her way around and making sure that these other bits of equipment that she'd seen for years but never actually used, how they actually work. And there's not really a shortcut of how to make that any easier. Part of what we do, like when we coach somebody, we always have a combination of in-person and remote coaching. So we'll have some sessions with a coach and some sessions on your own, because we believe it's really, really important to get you into the gym on your own, and you're going to shit your pants and be like, oh God, what am I going to do? But then the next session, it's a little bit easier. And then the next session, it's a little bit easier. And the next session, it's a bit easier. And then before you know it, it's not actually a big deal anymore. I can't speak for every gym and every facility, because there are some places that there's a bit of an attitude that can come with that, and like that's not our place, and that's part of the reason why I kind of set up where we had, because I really wanted to value like having a good community and like a friendly environment. Because there are some places that are just not the greatest places to train because of that, or they're very cliquey and things like that. But it's just a case of trusting the same as if you started a new job role, you would feel really uncomfortable in that new role at the start, and you're like, oh crap, I don't, or you're into a new building, you're like, I don't know where the toilets are, I don't know where, like we turned up this morning, I had no idea where we were going, and then once you've been here a little bit, you just navigate around, you know the faces, you know the names, and you feel comfortable when you settle in. It's exactly the same when you train. Having somebody there by your side at the very start, having a coach next to you to kind of navigate around, show you what you need to work on, and also to reassure you that the things that you're doing aren't wrong. Because that's also a big one. People are just like, I'm scared to do something because I don't want people to look at me and think, what the hell are they doing? Which, again, that's that. If they want to look into there, that's their problem, not yours. But I understand, it's hard to kind of have that idea, especially at the start, especially when you're not feeling super confident. So that's one of the benefits of maybe starting at home. Just getting the ball rolling, getting a little bit of capability to perform the movements with proper range of motion, get that form down a little bit more. So then when you do step into a gym, you're not completely at square one. And that's an option if you aren't working with a coach, or even if you are, like we work, like I said, remotely, where we'll do stuff over Zoom. But that's just like another thing to think about. There's no shortcut around it other than kind of putting your head down and getting through it as best you can, and just trusting that you will be okay within a few weeks. It'll just get easier.
Do you actually have any sessions where it's a group of people meeting and doing it at the same time?
So no, so we've done a couple of group things, but our group stuff is always very specific. So it'll be like a certain, that we're trying to master a certain movement or something like that. Because our coaching, we focus on, obviously we do the obvious stuff of like getting you fitter, getting you stronger, getting you leaner, getting you healthier, all the obvious stuff. But the bit that's more important is that we actually get you educated. I want you to understand what and how and why we do these certain things to keep you progressing over time. Because if you don't understand it, how do you carry on without us? Otherwise, you need to pay a personal trainer for the rest of your life to stay in shape, which like morally I don't think is right. Like we should teach you how to do it. We help you at the start. We set you up on a good path, and then we slowly step away and leave you to it. That's how our whole system works. We have like our coaching packages at the start, which are super intense, loads of help, support, guidance, everything. And then we taper down, giving you more freedom. And then we taper down, giving you more freedom. And we taper down until eventually you just turn up and do it on your own. And the problem with group stuff is it can't really be catered to you, because your mobility issues, your problems, the things that you work around, your goals are going to vary from the person next to you and the person next to you. So everyone ends up with a slightly compromised session. Whereas, because now just does my head in, because there's a big thing of like a small group PT. PT means personal training. How is it personal if you're in a group? It's not. Does my head in. Anyway, but like personal training should be catered specifically for you and your needs and everything that you've got going on, because you don't need to learn. I've skimmed the surface. That's like 5% of what like resistance training is. You don't really need to know much more than that. You just need to know the specifics that are relevant for you. That's really it. So, which is why we've always gone for that one-to-one approach. It does mean it's obviously going to be more expensive because you're literally paying for an hour dedicated with that coach. But the value that you get out of that is not just what lasts for that hour. It's the knowledge that you get afterwards that sticks with you. When you're in a class, don't get me wrong, sometimes you will learn things in a class. You're not going to learn nothing. But it's general advice, which is just going to, it's not going to last, you know, it's not going to stand the test of time quite as much as something that's been completely catered for you. All right. Any other questions? No? Nothing? So on the table, but we set this up yesterday. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to a Facebook page. We set it up yesterday. It's a free page, and over the next 14 days, well, actually, I think we can start it on Monday. Start it on Monday. I'm just going to basically kind of carry on helping you out for 14 days completely for free. And I'm just going to talk you through some more of the principles, trying to educate you a little bit more, help build a bit more confidence, and just motivate you to get started, get going with something. And I know it's a terrible time of year to try and make a start with something, isn't it? Like, we've got Christmas around the corner. The good thing about resistance training is having a few extra calories, although it's not necessarily the best for the weight loss side of things. Those extra calories are going to help you recover from that resistance training a little bit more. So if you need to comfort yourself a little bit, there is always that. Again, you know, you've got to make the most of it. Christmas doesn't come around all the time. But yeah, this is something that we've just set up completely for free, and I'll talk you through the whole thing. I'm going to do some Q&As in there. I'll probably do 1 or 2 Q&As. So, you know, you'll probably finish this, you'll go home, I'll be back at work, and you'll be like, oh, I should have asked that. You'll then have somewhere where you can ask me some questions. And also there'll be like an implementation workshop where I can actually show you how we would help implement some of the things that we, you know, we'll be talking about through the 14 days. Okay.
I'll also put this video up on there as well, so you can rewatch this if you wanted to. And there's a free ebook.
Yes, yeah. So that was actually how we initially got in touch with you, because like, I think it was beginning of the year, wasn't it, when I did the ebook? So we've got an ebook about resistance training during menopause. It goes over everything that I've just gone through, but in more detail. There are specific workouts that you can actually follow that are in there. That again, they're general advice. They're not, you know, it's not saying this is the only way of doing it, but it's a start. And yeah, normally, how much do we sell that for? 20 quid, 25 quid, something like that.
Yeah, I think full price is £40.
Oh yeah, it's normally discounted. But yeah, if you join the Facebook group, we're just going to give you that completely for free. Just want to try and help out as much as possible. The goal was trying to give you as much value out of like coming in and having a chat, because I know I ramble on and it's hard to like soak everything in, isn't it? There's like a lot that I've tried to cram into this. Okay. All right. Is anyone?
Yeah, we said, didn't we? If you can send us that, we'll put it in the chat
Yeah.
as well. And
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of people who wanted to come
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. So it's literally, it can be open to anyone. We'll give you the link for the Facebook group as well. So anyone who wants to join the Facebook group, we'll probably post the video in the Facebook group too. We'll give you a copy of the video so you can link, or we'll put it on YouTube or something, and then just send you the link out. So whatever's easiest, I think that's probably better, isn't it? No, not really. Like, it's not going to be as much as like saying, here's an exact plan, do this exact thing. It's going to be kind of talking you through the principles a little bit more, so you can understand where to get started and how to go through it. It's without diving into things quite specifically to each individual. It's really hard to say that, which I can't do for everybody for free, unfortunately. But like, obviously we coach people, and we can talk you through all that if that's something that you did want to do later down the line. But that's not the goal of this. It's really just to give you something to help you get started, to give you someone who you can talk to and ask questions, and just help you figure out where you're at right now. But like I said, things like don't even need a tote bag. If you've got like one of those bags for life, or those like Hessian bag kind of things, like, that's the start. It's not quite as maybe ergonomic as something like this is going to be. Even just like loading up a backpack. If you're doing your squats, you can put a backpack on, and then that will put it around the front of you. That will allow you to add extra load. And right at the very start, when you're doing a squat, you're the load. Like, just your own body weight is enough of the load to get started. And like, I do recommend that a lot of the clients will start at like zero. They'll start nothing body weight, and then week 1 we'll add a can of beans, or do you know what I mean? It's progressing from that point. So Yeah, whether you need equipment depends on you and what your experience is in the past. But if you're creative enough, you don't necessarily need it. Actually, one other thing that I didn't mention: if you are really limited on equipment or resistance bands, or even you don't have many cans of beans in the house, you can implement something called tempo. So it's just controlling the cadence of the movement. The slower and more controlled it is, the more time under tension you have, which means it's more challenging. It allows you to get more out of less total weight. That's one of the things that we used a lot during lockdown. So people that only had had a 12 kilo kettlebell, but they were used to doing 100 kilo squats. We're like, right, okay, how are we going to make 12 kilos feel like 100 kilos? And you can't, but by adding in some tempo work, some pause work. So they might do a 3 count down to the bottom of the squat, pause for 2 seconds, and then come back up. That's then made 12 kilos feel a hell of a lot harder than just up and down like they would normally for a squat. So yeah, that's another way of squeezing more out of less. And there is benefits from doing tempo work as well, because when you're newer to training, deliberately controlling the cadence of a movement means that you have more time to be mindful of your positioning. You're thinking about it. You're not just dropping in, bouncing out of it. Like you've got more control, so you can catch yourself when you make mistakes. And it's really helpful to film some of your own workouts if you're training at home, so you can watch that video footage back, because it takes 10 seconds to go onto YouTube and type in good squat technique or good hinge technique or deadlift technique, or whatever it is that you're looking for. Watch that video, watch your video. What's wrong? What's different? And it's going to be trickier. It's not, because you don't know all the things, but if you've got them pretty much side by side, you'll be able to identify a couple of the obvious points. You won't get the smaller bits, but it's definitely a start, and it's often, if somebody doesn't, can't afford coaching, or doesn't, not in a position to get coached, it's a way where you can try to educate yourself. You basically just need to start being like analytical about your own training, like track what you do, write it down, film it, make notes, track it on an app, whatever you want to do. Progressively do it over time, watch it back and try and pick holes in it and make adjustments over time, and you'll keep progressing. That's all that a coach does for you, really. But we just, we can pick up on more stuff that you probably wouldn't, and we're able to address things faster because we, like I said, silly little cues like shutting the car door with your bum. Like it's a hinge movement, so tricky for a lot of people, because they end up like not knowing how much knees to bend, and they're trying to round over, and they're like, oh no, and then you're like, okay. That one little thing works for so many people. Okay. Right. Anything else? We're good? Yeah. Right. Cool.
One of the other things, obviously, if you don't want to do like the 14-day Facebook group thing, we do have a free consultation. You can pop in, you can speak to us.
Yeah.
So if you're not happy to be in a group with a lot of people and you want to talk about your individual needs, free consultation. You sit down with Lewis, with myself, and we just talk about you, what you need. And if you do want any type of coaching, obviously we can set you up straight away with that. That's probably the best way to think about it. If you're trying to do something at home, so whether that's like cooking or something like that, you can research a recipe, you can cook it yourself and eat it. It would probably take a bit longer and not be as good as if you go to a 5-star restaurant and you sit down and relax. Kind of, you view that as what coaching's like.
Yeah.
So that you can research your training program and write it yourself. It'll just take you a little bit longer. Obviously, if you pay someone to do it, you can obviously get it to you guys a lot faster.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
But obviously, you can do it yourself more than having 5-point simple principles that will be put in these groups. It's just entirely to you if you want to work with someone.
Yeah. And the consultation as well, like I said, you're not obliged to buy anything from me when we're there. Like, that's pretty much what I do day in, day out, is consult with clients.
And come and look at the gym and see we're not that scary.
Yeah, that's also a factor. Yeah, people often think, especially looking at us, I don't know if you've ever seen what our gym looks like, but if you quickly Google it, it's like all black and red. The goal was to be like the opposite of a pure gym, so which tends to look not too dissimilar to like a hospital, very like blue and white everywhere, or green and white. So the goal was to be kind of the anti-pure gym, but I think at first glance it looks a little bit intimidating, but when people get in there, actually, if you look at the reviews on Google, like that's probably the thing that's spoke about the most, is how friendly everything is. But yeah, like
if you didn't want to go,
yeah.
well, just because, do you do anything online?
Yeah, we do loads online. So that's a good chunk of what we do. So we might have to set you up doing some regular calls. So we talk through some of the processes, and we can do personal training sessions over Zoom. That's something that we do quite a lot of as well, mainly during lockdown. But there is still a handful of clients that they travel for work and stuff like that. So we have to chuck those in occasionally. So as long as we know what equipment you've got access to at home, we can then custom build a plan based on that. We do it all the time. Like we've got clients that one of our guys, he has a holiday home in like Devon or somewhere like that, and there's a gym that he always goes to when he's there. So like now we know what kit he's got there, so we literally can just adjust his training plan based on when he's on holiday to when he's here. There's never an excuse. There's always a way around it. It's just having a bit of guidance and having a path. I do like to do the consultations in person if I can. Just because I do feel like I'm better at communicating in person than sometimes like over messages or email. I'm dyslexic, so my emails are shocking, and I just find it a lot harder to explain myself. But yeah, we do all kinds of things. Like I said, we work online with a lot of people. Right. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Like I said, if anyone has any questions after, you can just